Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Prime Time with Alex Stein. We have a very special episode for you guys tonight. We have the great Cannabis Clash. That's right. We're going to talk about marijuana legalization, remedies, health benefits, just the whole kit and caboodle, but whether or not we should legalize it. So with no further ado, I want to welcome on Martha Bueno. She is Bueno from Miami, and she is a proud libertarian. Martha, is that a fair description of you? And that's why you want to legalize weed or take away these laws? Is that correct?
That is correct. I have been a long-term libertarian with the lowercase L.
And Luke Niforatos has smartapproachestomarijuana.com. Is that right, Luke?
Learn about sam.org. Learn about sam.org. Yep. Check out our website. And we're the nonpartisan, science-based voice against the legalization of marijuana.
So you're a narc, is what you're saying. Is that what you're saying, Luke?
Some circles may say so. I like to think that I'm fighting for the next generation of kids.
I hope you're right. I know marijuana has, they say it has benefits, but I think, for every benefit, it probably has two negatives. But we'll get into that. All right. So with no further ado, we'll just give you guys each 3 to 5 minutes open statement. And then I figured, since you're the positive, I think you should go first, Martha. I think that's how it works in the debate, or is it the negative goes first? I think the positive goes first. Yeah, so we'll let Martha go. Just 3 to 5 minutes, and I'll start the clock at 6:02 now. If you go a little over, it's cool. And I guess just kind of give your spiel on why it should be, legal, and then we'll go to Luke for like 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll go, open dialogue, and then we'll take some questions at the end, and we should be done in about an hour. So with all that being said, Martha, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I want to say, first off, thank you so much for hosting this debate. I think it's really needed. So thank you, Alex, to you and your team for doing this. And yes, cannabis should be legal. And it should be legal because we adults do not need the government to be our daddies. Now, I just wanted to be clear. I am not in the position of advocating for marijuana use. At no point in any of this debate am I here to tell people to use cannabis, which is the proper term for the plant. I began as a cannabis advocate well over a decade ago. And the reason I became an advocate, even before ever using the plant myself, was because I became aware of a group of mothers called Canna Moms that were pushing for marijuana legalization in the state of Florida. I went to a conference and I heard Giselle Delgadillo, who is one of the mothers who founded this organization. And her son, Bruno, at the time was an infant, was suffering from over 200 seizures a day. And I sat in the audience listening to her tell the story of Bruno and how through marijuana, he went from having those 200 seizures. His condition is called Dravet syndrome, which is an extreme form of epilepsy, to less than 1 or 2 a week. And the reason that she was so passionate about marijuana, of course, was for her son. And I realized as a mother myself, that if there was something that my children needed and could not get because there were bureaucrats sitting somewhere, whether it's Tallahassee or in Washington, D.C., that say, you know what, your kid can't have this, while it's clearly showing benefits to that child, that I would do anything within my power to help this situation be corrected. So I have been an advocate for well over 10 years. And it really is one of those things where, you don't have to like cannabis. You don't have to want to use cannabis to understand that adults have the right to consume things. There are plenty of things that are bad for us. There's plenty of things that are not the best. You can consume sugar. You can consume anything you want. And as an adult, you have the right to make that decision. I did start using cannabis myself. It is something that I use medically. However, I no longer carry a medical card because in the state of Florida, carrying a medical card means that you can no longer exercise your Second Amendment right to protect yourself. And it is also very expensive. It is over $400 because you have to see a doctor twice a year, plus pay the state a lot of money. Now, these are the reasons why I am an advocate. I wanted to go ahead and point out several of the things that you won't hear from my opponent, Luke, tonight, and that is regarding his organization. I do not get paid to be an advocate. I do this completely for free because it is something that I believe in wholeheartedly. Luke gets paid from his 2 organizations that he represents. He gets paid well over $200,000 a year. At least those were the figures from 2 years ago. In addition, Smart Approaches to Marijuana does not disclose who pays them. However, we recently learned that there was about $78,000 that was given to them from USAID, and people know that organization now because Elon Musk is promoting it and promoting how it is being used. This is something that should really upset a lot of people, especially Americans, because the government is giving these organizations, these type of organizations, money to continue to promote prohibition. Prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and it's certainly not working today. Beyond those $78,000, there have been organizations that have given money. According to Reason Magazine, there was an Arizona company that gave Sam over $500,000 for this work that they do to go against marijuana. And that company that gave him that $500,000, they produce fentanyl, which directly competes with cannabis. Beyond that, Sam, the organization Sam, with Kevin being their CEO, is also works together with the DEA and with Dare America. He is a board member for Dare America, and he is also part of the DEA Educational Foundation. Again, many ties of the United States government using our tax dollars to fund an organization to promote prohibition. Thank you.
That was well said. Okay, Luke, so you're up. It's 6:07.
Great.
You got 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll get into the open dialogue.
Great. Thank you, Alex. And Martha, I really appreciated how little time you spent talking about reasons to legalize marijuana and more time attacking my organization, which is great because it means there aren't really a lot of great reasons to legalize. And I totally agree with you about that. So before I get into the meat of the matter, which is we're here to debate the issues and not here to attack each other. So Martha, you're not going to hear me personally attack you at all today because I'm here to debate. But what I will say is that everything Martha said has been totally disproven. As our current president would like to say, wrong, fake news. Okay, so we've got the receipts. It's on X. You can check it out. But that fentanyl company, we never touched the money from that, a dollar from that. They supported another effort, and the article she has in her tweet thread even says that. So it's not even saying what she says it says. And then in terms of our other efforts, everything she said has been totally disproven. So we have it on Twitter. The receipts are there. So I encourage you all to check that out. So enough about ad hominem. Martha, I encourage you, no, I challenge you to join me in a spirited debate of the facts and the issues. And so the reason why we're here today is to discuss marijuana legalization. Marijuana legalization means the commercialization of marijuana, the recreation of big tobacco into big tobacco 2.0. That is why my organization opposes the legalization. We promote a common sense third way approach, Alex, to marijuana, where we say nobody should be criminalized for their use of marijuana. You shouldn't have a record for possession. You should have your records expunged. We should have more medical research and more availability for the medical uses of marijuana where the science proves it to be medically efficacious. But legalizing marijuana for production, sale, and advertising will create big tobacco 2.0. And that's already what's happening. I live here in Colorado. I'm in the first state to legalize marijuana. I have 2 little girls, a wonderful wife. They are the reason why I joined this fight and the reason why I work on marijuana policy is because I see it every day right outside my window in the first state to do this. And what we've seen is far the opposite of what Martha talked about. She said, we shouldn't have authority, a big government nanny state. Actually, the more states that have legalized marijuana, the worse the nanny state has gotten. Okay, so first of all, big tobacco has put in billions of dollars into this industry. Second of all, big tobacco partnered with big pharma to push marijuana. That's what just happened. Altria, which is the new name for Philip Morris, just partnered with a major pharmaceutical company to start pushing what they call medical marijuana in Canada. So it's a match made in hell, Alex. Big tobacco and big pharma. First the jab, now the dab. Okay. Dabs, if you don't know what those are, dabs are the new high potency way to use marijuana. It's now concentrations up to 99% potent. It's causing serious mental illness and mental health issues for people who are using them, particularly our kids. So, there was some new research in the Lancet Journal of Psychiatry, one of the foremost journals in the world. What they found was you are 5 times more likely to develop schizophrenia or psychosis if you regularly use today's high potency marijuana. So you may be saying, Luke, you mentioned, it's a worse nanny state. How's that happening? Well, here's how it's happening. more people getting addicted. The addiction rate for these new drugs, these new versions of marijuana that this industry has created, the addiction rate is now 30%. It is now causing more mental illness and mental health issues than ever before. So you have a whole new class of people who are totally submitted to these big industries. They are now reliant on the public health welfare system. Okay, look, you may think that what you do in your own house is your own business. And for the most part, I would agree. But when you're using a mind-altering addictive drug, what happens when you get addicted? What happens when then your mind is altered and you go and get into a crash on the roads, or you have other things that happen at your workplace? The taxpayer subsidizes that in this country. If you go and get high and go for a drive and you crash, who's paying for that ambulance ride? The taxpayer is paying for it. Half of Americans are on Medicaid and Medicare. That's taxpayer subsidized healthcare services. Who's paying when the lower income communities who are being targeted by this marijuana industry? All the stores selling marijuana products, folks, are in lower income communities, not high end communities. Those lower income communities are on the welfare system. Most of them are much more likely to be having socialized, not social, well, it is socialized medicine in many ways, but taxpayer subsidized medicine that is subsidizing their care for treatment for marijuana addiction, for example, or treatment for marijuana induced psychosis when they go to the hospital, for example. That is up big time in this country. So what we have is commercialization from legalization. We have tobacco and pharma and all these major industries that are pumping money into this. They want to make money off of addiction. We have people developing more mental health issues, more crises. And what that leads to, folks, is bigger government. I wish that our decisions only involved ourselves and we all paid for our decisions. We don't. We don't. We have a social safety net, whether you agree with that or not. We don't live in a vacuum. That's why we cannot take a libertarian approach to drug use. Thank you, Alex.
Very well said. Okay, let me do one quick ad that we're going to get into back and forth. So think about what you want to say. So I'm going to kick you guys out. Hold on. All right, guys. So you know our sponsor. They're a great sponsor. We love them. PureHealth. PureHealth Research, they do such great things. You guys know it. Let's be honest, we're not getting any younger. And if you want to look and feel your best, you need to check out PureHealth Research. They have 45 premium health supplements designed to help with every health goal. Whether it's boosting your energy, trimming belly fat, supporting healthy blood sugar, pumping your testosterone up, or even reducing swelling in your legs, PureHealth Research Supplement Store has you covered. Each formula is crafted with natural, non-GMO ingredients backed by clinical research and manufactured right here in the United States of America. And here's the best part. PureHealth Research is offering you an exclusive 50% discount. That's right, 50% discount. Just go to purehealthresearch.com and use coupon code ALEX at checkout with their 365-day money-back guarantee. There's zero risk in trying something new. So why wait? Head over to purehealthresearch.com now. Explore their 45 amazing supplements and save 50% before this deal ends with the coupon code ALEX. Don't miss the chance to start the year feeling your absolute best. You guys know you want to feel good. You got to feel that Pure Health Research lifestyle. Okay, now we can get back into the nitty gritty. All right, hide that. Okay, guys, so thank you for that. We are back to the debate. You know, things got a little spicy. Let's not lie. Martha, I think that was fair. You did attack him a little bit more than you talked about why marijuana should be legal. So with that being said, we shouldn't just do ad hominem attacks, but I think it's fair to, say, I guess, his background. But I'd like to start off, I guess, Martha, with you. Would you like to have a rebuttal? What would you like to start off by saying, after you heard, his introduction?
Absolutely. And Luke, as I said originally, I was not going to sit here and tell people to consume marijuana. And I think one of the main reasons that you felt that I did not say anything about cannabis and why people should use it, despite my clear indication as
just to be clear, I didn't say you said they should use it. I said we're discussing legalization, and you didn't say anything why we should legalize it. But
right, clearly. So legalization is something that, I think we can look specifically at what has happened in this country before. In the 1920s, we had prohibition of alcohol. And what happened under prohibition of alcohol? We had adults who were still consuming. It didn't stop the consumption. And instead, it created cartels and gangs. In the 1920s, we had a rise of cartels, people like Bugsy Siegel and Al Capone, and a mass crisis in the United States. We see that today under the current prohibition as well. So one of the number one reasons why we should end this war on drugs, specifically the war on marijuana, is the incredible cost, not just the financial cost, but the cost of lives, the cost of people in jail. According to the Cato Institute, over $51 billion annually is spent by the war on drugs. Now, you talked about the cost to taxpayers. Well, there is a huge cost to taxpayers, Luke. I don't know about you, but I think $51 billion annually is quite large. You can find this, of course, on my thread on X. Beyond that, in the 1980s, we used to incarcerate over 1 million people every single year for cannabis. A lot of those people may still be in jail. We don't know the actual numbers. There's still well over 30,000 people in jail for cannabis currently, including probably a lot more. Those are just the ones that the Last Prisoner Project was able to identify, but they specify that they cannot track all of the people in local cities and county jails. So the number is probably exponentially larger. So one of the major reasons why cannabis should be decriminalized or legalized is because it is costing Americans. It is costing Americans dearly. It is also costing the rest of the world. The United States makes every other country follow our same policies, despite the fact that we have evidence from places like Portugal, like Vancouver, where decriminalization has actually helped decrease addiction problems and has decreased other issues that come with prohibition. Now back onto cannabis and why several of the things that you said. You went ahead and said, as if it was fact, that cannabis causes psychosis. I also included in my thread several articles where it is not a cause for psychosis. And as a matter of fact, it has been found that people with these tendencies can and do look for solutions and have been shown to have conditions prior to using cannabis. But even if
Martha, I do have to cut you off though. I feel like, you're very smart, but you don't think like by smoking marijuana, like by, the, not even just the marijuana, but I guess like the papers that you use to roll it and the chemicals, in the vapes, don't you think it probably does cause some sort of effect? I mean, I think we'd have to be intellectually honest to say if you smoke marijuana, that it doesn't have a cognitive effect over time, right? I mean, you really think that there's not? I'm not trying, it's not me in the debate, and I like marijuana. I'm not anti-marijuana, but I'm just saying, aren't we being honest that it does have some non-reversible effects on the human mind? I think that would be obvious. Do you not think that that's the case, Martha?
I don't know that it's obvious. I mean, we can ask somebody like Willie Nelson or Snoop Dogg and see if they have any particular issues that they'd like to disclose and let us know after decades and decades of use if they actually have some type of ill effect. We were particularly discussing schizophrenia, which is something that Luke brought up specifically. And there is no actual link. The study that Luke mentioned is a very flawed study, and it is not conclusive in any way, shape,
What are the flaws with the study,
listeners,
Martha? Because the study from the Lancet Journal of Psychiatry in 2019 is actually one of the most cited studies in the world of research on marijuana, and it controlled for the family history of psychosis and schizophrenia in all the which ways that you can.
Did you just say that it is like definitive? Because that's what you had.
It is widely considered one of the most authoritative studies that on this subject, Martha. And not just that study, they also did another systematic review of hundreds of other studies on this subject in 2022, which found hundreds of other studies that have looked at the association between marijuana use and mental illness, particularly schizophrenia and psychosis, and controlling for dozens and dozens of different ways to look at the family history. And now it's important for folks to understand it's not perfect, right? And I think that what Martha's getting into is, I think, besides the point. Whether or not we think marijuana is causally related to mental illness, the fact of the matter is that it exacerbates and causes these mental illnesses to show themselves in people who use them across the country. And in fact, hang on, Martha, let me finish. You've been talking for a while. The National Institutes of Health just published a major study of thousands and thousands of people looking at medical records across the whole country last year. And what they found, and they sent out a bulletin to everyone in the country on this. This is how solid this data was. 30% of all the cases of schizophrenia among young men in this country can be attributed to cannabis use disorder. For the National Institutes of Health, our nation's top research institution, to be publishing research like this and making a claim that crazy, you have to know how legitimate that data has to be.
So
So
that's
the fact of the
what we're
matter
going
is,
to use is
you know,
because the NIH that is funded by the United States
well,
government
Martha,
says
you know,
something,
and
then
we
we're
can
going to,
argue
of
about
course,
who's
no, it
funded
is
by what.
gospel now. Let's just agree that it's
However,
gospel.
we have to deal with the data and the research that we have, Martha. I mean, I'm not going to go listen to a marijuana industry veteran who's got, you know, industry backers tell me that it's fine. So who are we supposed to listen to? We have to listen to the information that we have, and that's the scientists that are out there researching this. Now, obviously, we need to look at a lot of different studies. You can't just look at one, which is why I mentioned a systematic review that looked at hundreds of different studies, including this Lancet study, as well as the NIH and the work that they did. So the mental illness piece of this, though, is key because we have an industry that's behind this. Now, remember, I was talking about big tobacco. So Philip Morris, they've put hundreds of millions, in fact, billions of dollars into this industry. Philip Morris was on the stand along with 5 other tobacco industry veterans back in the 70s, on the stand under oath before Congress. They said nicotine is not addictive. They swore that to Congress, that nicotine was not addictive. How crazy does that sound now? Then they had a master settlement because of their lies and the harm they inflicted on the American people. They were lying. It was a total scam. Now we know. Marijuana, we have marijuana industry executives that are out there saying marijuana is not addictive, saying marijuana is medicine. I mean, since when was Philip Morris involved in the medicine game? Yet they are investing in medical marijuana with a big pharma company. Okay, so these guys are notorious scammers. They now have marijuana. They want to get everyone hooked on it. They want us all to think it's medicine. It's all medicine. Now, I'm not detracting that there are some medical uses for marijuana. You can pull components out of that plant, just like anything else that could potentially be medicinal. But this idea that we're going to roll up joints and smoke them for medicine, or we're going to have these high potency concentrates, these candies, these waxes, that is what this industry is lying about. And they have totally lied to our kids. In fact, a study just came out today. CNN just reported on it. Take a look. The marijuana industry has gotten around the laws on advertising so they can target their products directly to kids. They're targeting marijuana products to kids as we speak. Why would an industry that's interested in medicine and helping everyone feel better and is totally fine and we should let them into our country, why would they be targeting our kids with high potency products that can totally damage their health?
Well, and I want to say this real quick, though, Martha. And Luke, you make some very good points. And I think, there are some benefits, obviously, I think physical from marijuana. If somebody has an injury, like we say, cancer patients, this is kind of my personal opinion. But it's obvious that if you've smoked marijuana, it is a depressant. You can have fun on marijuana. You can have the most fun time. You go to a pool party, you be high as a kite, you go to a buffet, pizza tastes better. It enhances stuff. But at the end of the day, with any drug, it has a kind of a withdrawal, depression aspect to it. That's just a fact. So that's why I am not like, oh, you smoke weed your whole life. I know people that smoked weed their whole life, well-adjusted, smart guys, attorneys. So I'm not saying it like automatically makes you have, psychotic breaks, but I think it does. Like those guys are a little less sharp than they would have been if they hadn't smoked marijuana for 40 years. But we don't have to get into that. But I think you're being intellectually honest, Luke.
Get into that, Alex, because the research
okay, well, we can.
What you're saying. And on top of that, what I will say is that, we all know the person who smokes cigarettes every day and they're fine, they didn't get cancer. But is that the rule? Does that mean that everyone should smoke cigarettes because the one person we know or the 10 people we know didn't get cancer? No. We know that the data tell us that you are very much at risk to get cancer, and there are millions of people dying all around the world who smoke cigarettes on a regular basis. Same thing with marijuana. We all have that friend who smokes weed and we think is doing just fine based on our observation, which, by the way, is not everything. But that doesn't mean that everyone is just fine when they're using marijuana. And it's really important we understand that. We don't make policy based on a few anecdotes. We make it based on the data and how it impacts kids and people across the whole country.
Let me know when I can interject there.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead, Martha. Sorry. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there because I think we both agree. And Martha, like you said, I really think that, I don't know how we do it, but if everybody's on weed now, these Delta 9 gummies that you can buy in all these stores, those things get you so messed up. So I would like it to be legal because then we could actually get access maybe to clean marijuana, not stuff that's sprayed with chemicals. But I just don't think that's a reality, right? I just don't think in practice. But please go ahead.
Actually,
so that's where I'm at. Okay,
there is an economic principle called the iron law.
Well, aren't they always going to spray stuff on it and stuff, though? I mean, aren't they always going to add chemicals? You know what I mean? It's
right.
Like buying
and that's part of the iron law of prohibition.
Yeah.
That is part of the iron law of prohibition, which states that the more illegal a substance, the higher potency that people were selling, because it is more economically feasible to carry a smaller amount. It's like why during Prohibition, people didn't find beer on the market, on the illegal market. They'd find whiskey and moonshine and things that were exponentially stronger, because that is how the market regulates itself in that case. If we made it legal, once Prohibition was over, beer became the national drink of choice again, because most people don't want those higher products, those really intoxicating products. And part of the issue with the current system of prohibition that we're under is that a lot of these companies are creating products that are not regulated. It is exactly like going to a bar or something and having a glass of wine, but you don't know if it's a 7% wine, a 14% wine, or a 70% wine. We don't have this regulation because of prohibition. But going back to what Luke was saying previously, he did a lot of those, you hear it a lot, and he did a lot of it with correlation does not mean causation. He said 30%, like it's a big number. 30% of people with schizophrenia it sounds like a big number. In the United States, it's less than 1% of people who suffer from schizophrenia. So I appreciate that you're bringing up these studies, Luke. And I think that, again, cannabis is not for everyone. And I have not said at any point that everyone should be using it. It is something for some people. And like adults, we should be able to make the decision, because what happens when we adults are not the ones that can make the decision? You have this unregulated market. You have this market that is like the wild, wild west, where products are sold where you don't know what's in them, where products are sold to children, because the black market, that's how children get access to these. You don't see children getting access to alcohol because it is a legal, regulated market. When children get access to alcohol, it is generally from an adult that provides it to them, and not because they can just walk into a store and buy it. You don't see alcohol stores giving kids alcohol at school or selling it to them at school. You do see that for the illegal drug market. Again, all of these are things with prohibition. But going back to your claim that it is not a medicine, that I find to be one of my funniest points that you just made, because you know what? The United States government has a patent on cannabis for medicine. They call it a neuroprotectant.
Just to clarify, I said that smoking joints is not medicine. I said there are components that are, though.
But that is how a lot of
I did say that. Yeah. So
yes. It is a medicine, and so much so that there are 2 pharmaceutical products, at least that I know of. There may be more, Epidiolex and Marinol, which are based on cannabis and sold to people with medical conditions. So you are okay with big pharma creating a synthetic. Luke, I let you finish, sweetheart. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I disagree with you.
I'm sorry?
I disagree with you.
You get to talk. But real quick though, but there's a lot of drugs on the market. Fentanyl is technically a legal drug. That doesn't mean, that should be decriminalized. I mean, just because it's right though, Martha.
I think that all drugs honestly should be legal, but that's not what we're discussing in this debate, because at the end of the day, adults, again, will get access to it, whether it's through the legal market or the illegal market. It does not stop people from consuming drugs. Unfortunately, I wish we could wave a magic wand and say, hey, nobody do any drugs, nobody do anything that can hurt them. Also, please don't consume sugar, don't go gambling. There are lots of activities that adults do that are not necessarily in their best interest. It is not in the best interest of Americans to have the government regulate which activities we can and cannot participate in, just because it's not the best for us. So going back to the point I was making, cannabis is medicine. It is currently being sold as medicine. It is called medical marijuana in many states, including my own of Florida, because it is known to help with many, many conditions, including pain. Also, in states that do have legalized marijuana, opioid sales decrease drastically. It is also being used for a host of other conditions, anything from glaucoma to what I take it for myself, which is arthritis pain. I have not had to have a pharmaceutical company product because I consume cannabis. So again, wanting to push back on your characterization of the plant, it is true that people can consume cannabis in many ways, including smoking, but to say that it is not medicine just because of the way that they are taking it, I think is completely wrong. And I think it doesn't do a service to people who want to find out more information about this plant. I think that's pretty much it. You keep going back to big tobacco and big pharmas as if that is the market. we know that again, yes, where there's money to be made, people are going to try and get into that market. This is exactly why we should be pushing for a legalized method, so that there is regulation, and so that small mom and pop shops that do, for example, craft beers could do the same thing for cannabis. Craft cannabis should be something that we strive for, instead of, for example, what we have here in Florida, which is a type of monopoly structure where only a certain number of companies could get in. And therefore, those companies are now the big guys, and they're the ones selling the products, and they're the ones in control of the market. So pushing back against what you also said, I think that having a open market allows for a lot of people to be able to get into it, and better products, and it serves the people better as well.
Yeah. Luke, well, you can answer all that, but in your answer, can you answer what's more dangerous, alcohol or marijuana, in your just personal opinion?
Oh, good question. Okay, so I'll get into alcohol in a second. So just regarding what you were saying about craft versus big business, I share your concerns about big business, which for those of you who don't know, that's why Martha and I were able to work so well together against the measure in Florida against marijuana, where she was on my side in the debate there. So I was just telling her, I wish she was on my side again this time around, but we'll get you.
Martha's good. Martha's good. You sound very eloquent. Yeah, no, you sound very professional. Talking about weed.
Absolutely. She's fantastic. So, but unfortunately though, where Martha and I diverge in our views on this is that the big industry is impossible to extricate from this. Look at what's happened with tobacco. It's a few very large players that have dominated the entire space. The tobacco industry is the closest one that we should be looking at for comparison to the marijuana industry because of the similarity of delivery. It's cigarettes, it's vapes, it's a lot of these other products. So it is really, unfortunately, it's a match made in hell there between tobacco and marijuana. And the tobacco industry has been looking at marijuana since the 1970s. It's been in their game plan for a long time. So I think that's what we need to look at. There is no, burgeoning. There are small, I guess head shops and whatever, but that's not a big part of the market. And so it's important to understand that what's happened in every single state, and I live in the first one to legalize it, is big business has taken over. It's pushed out the mom and pops. There's no way to prevent that. In fact, the only way to prevent that from happening is to do something that Martha maybe would hate even worse than not legalizing marijuana. And that is actually to break out the big stick of government and break up monopolies and force corporate actors to not be in a free market. That's the only way you stop consolidation of a market. I mean, it is a natural tendency of corporations in a free market system. So unfortunately, there's no way to beat that. That's just their tendency. And so what that means is kids and everyday Americans lose while big for-profit addiction tycoons win, selling an addictive drug that they are blatantly lying about. And it's not surprising that they're lying about it because they lied about nicotine. They lied about cigarettes. They're lying about their e-cigs and vapes and everything else. They're lying. We can't trust these people who sell products that hurt and kill and addict. We can't trust them. So,
did you just say kill?
Absolutely. They sell products that kill.
How many people have been killed by cannabis?
Cigarettes kill.
Well, somebody's probably got a DWI on high, right? Martha, you think that? I'm saying nobody's overdosed. Nobody's physically overdosed, I don't think ever. But
so the way that potency has changed marijuana, I think overdose may be likely in the coming years. But what we're seeing is people dying on the roads from people impaired by marijuana. We've seen a child die from ingestion of a marijuana edible in Virginia. We've seen a number of different stories that have happened like this. So there are a lot of people that are dying from this. And so you need to actually only ask parents.
Well, I don't know about that, Luke. A lot of people die from weed. Come on.
In fact, I'll actually, so this is a book that just came out, was just given to me. This is Randy and Heather Backus from Minnesota. Their son had no history of psychosis or schizophrenia. Read this book, A Higher Love. He developed psychotic symptoms, and then he ended up killing himself because of a psychotic episode driven by high potency marijuana use. Ask them if marijuana is killing people. They'll give you a loud and clear answer, and you can read a book about it.
But that's true. But that's one person but we don't even know. He could have been molested. I'm not saying that happened. I'm not trying to disgrace it, but we don't know.
It was the only story I had.
You just said we couldn't use anecdotal
evidence. Luke, you are right. There's probably a lot of people that have committed suicide after using marijuana. I agree with you on that. Yes,
Talking about the parents whose kids have died from this drug, who would be very upset right now at you laughing, saying,
well,
that
is it
marijuana
young
is
people
different.
that are doing it? Is it
It's
younger people that are doing it,
young
Luke?
people?
Because I mean,
It's predominantly young people now because they're being targeted by this industry. So I think it's really important to say that. But so that's one. You wanted me to ask. You asked me about alcohol.
but you know why we laugh real quick? We're not laughing because it's insensitive. Because anybody that knows about marijuana, it's like maybe the super high potent new marijuana,
Well,
you could
yes.
OD and die, but you're not going to OD and die even from
Yeah.
1,000 milligram gummy.
Well,
You're
and
just going to get really high and sick.
the public thinks it's crazy to even think that somebody would be hurt in this way or even develop mental health issues from these products. That's why it's important to understand that they've changed so much. The average product 2 decades ago was 3 to 5% THC. Now it's 99% THC. It's a totally different drug. It doesn't do the same things that it used to do. So that's
I
what's
agree with
important.
I'm
Luke
sorry,
on
I'm
that.
going to tell you that is
What else?
absolutely
I wanted to talk about the alcohol thing real
the
quick.
plant
Martha,
itself
he
does
asked
not
me about
grow
it.
in a
So-
99% chance. That is, it doesn't exist. What
Well,
you're talking about 99%
Martha.
is chemically altered and or it concentrates.
Yeah, and that's what the
It is
industry
not
does
the
is
same
when they
thing.
get their.
And
So
what
here's
that
the thing:
means is that
when
people
you
can use
legalize
less
something,
quantity.
it doesn't stay natural. The marijuana plant in a state of nature 3 decades ago, if you found it growing out in a field, it had 2 to 3% THC in it. Now the average is well over 20%, and products are up to 99% potent. That didn't happen naturally. That has happened from chemical lab creations. Where did the chemicals and the lab creations come from? From the inception of this industry, which was created when we legalized marijuana. You know, you have all these people who are, she talked about these cartels and the gangs and whatever from previous decades. They couldn't even dream up dabbing marijuana and these shatters and these waxes. None of these product classes
I'd love to
existed
answer this if
before
you.
No,
legalization.
you can. They are strong though, Martha. Those the
industry
waxes and dabs are very
You
strong.
can purchase all of these products, like you said, Luke. That's absolutely correct. Now, first of all, going back to what the potency was 20 years ago, that you don't even know because the standards, the lab testing has developed accordingly with technology. So our also, it was illegal. Which lab exactly was testing that illegal Mexican brick that used to come across the border? So it's funny that you're basing this on some illegal weed before, and now it's this high potency. So first of all, the highest
Martha, real quick. I hate to keep it interrupted. You don't think marijuana is a lot stronger now? In my lifetime, it's gotten like I didn't have dabs. My dad, maybe my dad knows what a dab is, but my dad didn't have dabs. Your mom didn't have dabs. You know, now you go to a cannabis place. You know, it is. I feel like I think we can all agree that now you can get it more concentrated and it's a little more intense than.
And you know what that means? Yeah. It means that you can use less quantity to get to the same place you want to go. So you can do a dab. Look, I haven't gotten a sentence in the last few minutes because you just keep interrupting. So I'd appreciate if you just give me a minute. You said several different things. You equated the alcohol lobby and you said that there's no way around getting over this big intrusive government protected monopoly, which is simply not true. People today are able to roll their own tobacco cigarettes. They don't have to purchase the tobacco from the big companies. But beyond that, cannabis is literally a weed. It grows very easily. People, if it wasn't illegal, could grow it in their own homes. So this idea that if we somehow make it legal, it's going to be this monopoly because these corporations make it so is simply false. You are using propaganda to try and scare people into believing what you believe, which is that somehow everybody's just going to be high off of this super high potency thing, which is true. We now have options. You can go into a smoke store. You can go into a dispensary. You can go into many places. You can go into a place like Planet 13 in Las Vegas, which is this huge location where they have all these crazy things that you can, chocolate factory. They've got all these crazy things. Sure. You can purchase whatever type of cannabis you want in these legal states. And what it is showing us is that natural cannabis doesn't grow past 30%, 34%, I think is the highest at the cannabis cup that we've ever seen. So this idea that it's at this 99 percentile is false. Wholeheartedly reject that premise. What you're talking about are these concentrates. And you are correct. Some people require a larger dose. You are comparing what, for example, somebody like myself, which I do smoke a natural plant, and that's more than enough for me. But I have, thanks to my advocacy work, met many people, including veterans from multiple groups, that they use those dabs because for them, a larger concentration is what helps them function and get through their pain, get through their PTSD, get through several things. So to use this like, oh, well, if people have options, they're just going to be, off the walls with cannabis is really, that I find a lot more offensive. There are a lot more people that go fight in wars for this country and come back with conditions that use this product and use those high concentrate dabs. Weed for Warriors is the group that I used to connect with a lot on this, and they are the ones that taught me about dabs and how much it helps them. So I do take offense to what you said in that, because you are basically saying that people shouldn't be able to get the dose that they need, or that they'd have to chain smoke cigarettes to get to that same level of relief. So there is a time and a place for these. And no, children are not just going to be able to get access. You keep coming back to children. When we have prohibition, children are able to get those products, because if you're already breaking the law by providing that substance, you don't care. You're not going to be checking IDs. Again, we have the evidence to show this. But you went back to addiction, and you said a lot about addiction and big tobacco and these addictive substances. There is no evidence that marijuana is any more addicting than other substances. One of the biggest addicting substances is sugar, and we give that to children in breakfast cereals, and we advertise it, and we promote it to them, and we give it to them in school. Cannabis is not necessarily an addictive, but let's not sugarcoat it. It can be addicting to some people. And so for those people, again, this isn't a substance that they should be using. But addiction in cannabis is going to be one of the lesser addictions. And really where people find the addiction is to how they feel. It is to their own body. It's not necessarily to the product. Furthermore, we have evidence that cannabinoids, products also found in the cannabis plant, not only are beneficial to people's bodies, we have an entire endocannabinoid system, which is wonderful, helps people regulate and reach homeostasis, which is something that the human body seeks to have, which is a leveling of your system. We find that breast milk, mother's breast milk, even mothers who have never consumed cannabis have cannabinoids. So I think that, there's a lot of information that you've been giving out that I think is just completely false. And I think that it doesn't benefit this argument. I think that people who want to learn more about cannabis should be able to look into it. We should be able to study it because of the federal illegality of it. The United States government does not allow these in-depth research projects. So a lot of the information we are getting, including on cannabinoids, comes from Israel and comes from other places like Italy. And yes, we are finding that the human body does have this endocannabinoid system. It was discovered in the 1970s. And all of the research found there has shown that it does help people quite a bit. So again, I'm not saying that this product is for everyone. Not everybody should be consuming cannabis. But, we can't hide. We can't just ignore that people are being helped, that this product does help a lot of people. And, making the government be our daddy and tell us what we can and can't buy, again, makes it so that people have to go to those markets. And like I said, the iron law of prohibition is what you've been describing. Clearly, people would rather sell the higher dose concentrates because they make more money than to just sell the loose flower. It's part of the problem. You are describing all of the symptoms of the war on drugs rather than the drug itself.
Okay. Alex, should I go ahead and
That was a lot. That was a lot. And, Martha, to be fair, some of the accusations against Luke, I don't think Luke's really lied about much, other than, Martha, this as a weed smoker, though. The stuff you can get at a weed shop is pretty strong, it's not, I've done the stuff, so I just know firsthand that it's not for the faint of heart. But at the same time, I agree with you too. There's tons of benefits for it, especially physical benefits. But Luke, you kind of didn't answer my question about marijuana. Well, I want to say some of the accusations, though, Martha, though, when you called some of his statements wrong, I think Luke's actually been kind of fair down the middle. With some of it, I don't know exactly what he's lied about. I thought he's been okay. Well, name one thing. What did he lie other than the 30% of psychosis? But I think you could just people that have psychosis. Everybody's tried marijuana. I think it's 100%. If you've ever had psychosis, there's probably 100% that you've smoked marijuana in your life. So I don't even believe that. I think it would be 100%. Because I think everybody experiments with it. But and on the youth thing, though, Martha, and I'm not even trying to take Luke's side. Now with these vapes and all this stuff, these kids can get access to drugs, I feel like, easier than ever. because it's so from China or however it is. Now with vapes, they can sneakily do it. I didn't have a vape when I was a kid. If I smoked weed, I stunk. You know, I was worried. I had to take like 2 showers. It's easier for kids to be discreet about drug use now because of the new methodology of being able to smoke a fake smoke and be odorless almost. So I do think that it increases the use in kids.
However, those kids are not getting them on the legal market. Those kids, unless they are prescribed by a doctor, those children are not getting. There is not a single state in the United States where anybody can acquire marijuana under the age of 21. So if children are consuming it, they're not getting it from the legal market, which again goes to my point. If you are already breaking the law and selling cannabis, you don't care if you're selling it to a child or to somebody of age. You're already breaking the law.
So I want to talk about the kids thing. So you know what she's saying about, you know, there's no one who's getting access to legal drugs, no kids who are getting access to legal drugs anywhere in the country is just patently false. From the standpoint of, we know that there are a long list of alcohol stores and tobacco stores and now marijuana stores that sell to minors. They're constantly caught doing that. It's a constant issue. So first of all, that matter continues regardless of.
It's a constant issue. Don't they lose their license?
Now, Martha,
to
now
sell?
it's my turn to talk for a little while.
Yeah,
So-
let's talk real quick. But you know,
first of all, the regulation isn't even happening. These companies aren't even being properly regulated. They're not even being inspected. That's the first issue. Second issue is, I went to public high school, and I think a lot of people watching probably did too. I think most of us did. And in public high school, alcohol and cigarettes were freely available to me. No, I didn't. You know, folks didn't go buy them at the stores. But the point is that our youth will get more access. The point is not that our youth will go into a pot shop and buy marijuana. The point is that there are so many more marijuana products now that are proliferating. There are so many more people using them that they are so much more prevalent that kids will have more access, which is exactly what has happened historically. So, for example, the opioid crisis. People didn't go into their, hospital, and some people did, but the majority of that crisis was not stealing fentanyl and OxyContin from the hospital. Okay, the way that people, more than 60% of people got their opioids from their friends and family through either being given that or stealing it from their cabinets. It was the availability of these drugs that were everywhere. Same thing with alcohol and tobacco. Vast majority of kids get it through their friends and their family, and people bring them to their parties. That is exactly what's happening with marijuana. When you restrict and prohibit drugs, a la, methamphetamines and fentanyl and opioids, etc. When you restrict these drugs, that reduces their prevalence in society. There's not as much of them laying around. They are societally discouraged. Yes, there are still people who use illegal drugs. There will always be people likely who use illegal drugs. But if you keep that number low, if you keep the prevalence of drugs low, then our youth will have less access. So let's talk about what the results are of legalization. Now we have, it was 7 million adults who were using marijuana every single day in this country 10 years ago, according to our National Survey on Drug Use and Health. Now it's up to 20 million adults who are using it every single day. Now let's look at our youth. In every single state that has legalized marijuana, there's been a 25% increase in youth addiction to marijuana. So they are getting more access to these products, and they are getting more addicted. And Martha made a comment about sugar and not sugar coating, and that was a great pun. I don't know if that was on purpose, but sugar, while it may be addictive, if you eat something that is sugary and go for a drive, we're not worried about your driving. If you eat something that is sugary and you show up on the factory floor to work, we're not worried about you eating sugar. But if you consume a mind-altering substance like marijuana that can very much alter your mind, and it is scientifically solid proof and fact that it impairs your ability to perform at your top performance at work. It impairs your ability to drive. Hopefully, Martha, we're not going to get into debate about that. If you're taking that, that is a big deal. That is a problem for society. So that's the difference between sugar and marijuana, just for the record. And then the final thing I did want to say was about alcohol, because we do hear a lot about alcohol. That's constantly something, that I hear about is marijuana and alcohol. And so to answer your question, Alex, I don't think either drug is any worse or better than the other. What I think is they're two different drugs that have different impacts. Okay, so alcohol is responsible for 100,000 American deaths a year in this country. Mm-hmm. Alcohol is the number one.
So that means it's worse, though, right? Doesn't that mean it's worse right there?
Well, 100,000 people, but no,
100,000 people, and that's probably light.
Fentanyl is
light. That's not how many people ruin their life
than alcohol is.
That's death.
I mean, fentanyl is less harmful than alcohol.
Mm-hmm. I would argue that fentanyl is less harmful than alcohol. I would say alcohol is the most harmful. I would say alcohol is the most harmful substance that is known to man because you can, first of all, get alcohol poisoning. That's very possible. Young people get that all the time. So, yes, you can OD from fentanyl, but usually a fentanyl person, you don't start off with fentanyl. Fentanyl you've been using a little bit. Well, that's true. I agree. I agree. Weed is the gateway drug. They say that.
100% of people who use fentanyl started off consuming milk when they were babies. I mean, why don't?
Well, she's right about that. She's right about that. But alcohol, I would say, is worse than fentanyl, believe it or not, because I think it ruins even more harm.
I've never heard that point made,
and
but
it's socially acceptable too.
Let me finish my point on that, though. So the reason why alcohol is such a deadly killer is not because it's more deadly than fentanyl. Because if you were to take a tiny little grain of fentanyl, it'd kill you. Versus you'd have to drink a lot more alcohol to kill you. So just on that basis, fentanyl is more deadly than alcohol is in terms of your acute use. But the reason why alcohol kills more people than fentanyl is because it is commercial, it is widely available, and it is fully promoted by our society. Okay, so looking at that example and now looking at marijuana, the difference between marijuana and alcohol is marijuana has a much more profound effect on your mental health. We've talked about it. Schizophrenia, psychosis, addiction.
I don't know about that either. Wait, you're telling me a person that drank every day or smoked weed every day?
It's not nearly as correlated as it is with marijuana. It
is with the same amount of use, like the same amount of comparable use. You're telling me they've done studies and that alcohol doesn't have a worse, because every time you drink alcohol, it kills brain cells. We all agree on that.
No, I'm not saying alcohol is good for you in any stretch of the imagination. The evidence is very clear. Alcohol is horrible for you. Any amount of it is horrible for you. But my point being that both drugs impact you in different ways. And so my point being that with marijuana, when we see it legalized and commercialized and become more available, the harms spread more evenly across the country and across a lot more people, just like what we've seen happen with alcohol. So that is the issue. You have more availability, it hurts more folks. And so it becomes another issue that's layered on top of alcohol. And so it's important to not say, well, marijuana, we think it's less harmful than alcohol, so let's legalize it. That doesn't make any intuitive sense. That's like saying, well, my headlight's broken, let me go smash in my taillight too to be consistent, right? Alcohol's got problems. We don't need to add more problems with a drug that we may think is different or maybe even less harmful.
So I'm going to
real quick though, Martha, you can talk, but because we only have about 10 minutes left, so we got to kind of get almost into our closing arguments. We're going to give you guys about a minute or two to close.
As long as we've been talking.
Yes, I know. Yeah, sorry. So we're going to get into that because you guys love to talk. And I feel like we're obviously not going to disagree that much. One thing we didn't really get into, which I would have liked to, maybe in a later debate or something, the economic benefits of marijuana, if it actually does, because I do think, like you mentioned Planet 13, even though that business supposedly loses money. But I do think that there is money to be made. I guess you talked about the businesses, but what do they say? Black people can get in the marijuana business and make money. So I don't know. That's what the media tells you, I guess, in the legalization states. My point is, I would have liked to get into that more. So answer his thing, and then let's get into, your closing arguments.
Sure. So, Luke, you did say something completely accurate, and that is that marijuana use is up. And part of the studies that we found is when marijuana use goes up, it is because alcohol use goes down. And in Canada, we've seen a severe decrease of people who consume alcohol. And as we just noted, alcohol kills in the United States, not from traffic accidents, just from alcohol all by itself, well over 100,000 people every single year. That means that 1 million people have died from alcohol in the last 10 years. So a decrease in alcohol, while also being an increase in marijuana, is not necessarily a bad thing. So I guess we can agree on this point that when marijuana is legal, that means that less people consume alcohol. I think that's a fantabulous thing. Also, you said 25% addicting. I'm not sure where you got that that statistic from, but that is not.
You're doing a really bad job of putting words in my mouth tonight, Martha. You got to work on not doing that.
I don't know if I heard of that stat.
Anyway,
you said it was 25% addicting, but anyways. There are plenty of studies that show that cannabis is not actually increasing in use in children. On the contrary, it's decreasing, and that too. Because
I don't think so. Come on, Martha. More people are smoking weed now than ever. When I was a kid, it was hard. Now you can get weed at all these Delta 9 shops. The cannabis, you can legally get it anywhere. Like it's almost too easy to get weed in this day.
Not in every state, but it is true that cannabis use does make alcohol use go down. So it depends on how.
I think that's good. I think marijuana is way safer than alcohol. In my personal opinion, alcohol is the devil. It is what it is. I just think it is a more potent thing. You say fentanyl is more potent because a grain kills you, but you can. So many kids are going to overdose and die on alcohol.
Something
this
he
year.
said before that I would love to touch on is you said that so many stores are caught selling to children. Well, that's absolutely not true, because if you are a store and you are caught selling to children, your license is revoked, especially after several times. So I would love to see again where you got that information from. It is the same with alcohol stores. If a cop catches an alcohol store, or is anybody in government catches an alcohol store selling to minors, their license is revoked. It's the same reason that clubs ask for ID when you get in. It's the same reason that you get ID'd when you purchase things, because nobody who is licensed, who has paid for their license and legal, is in the business of selling to children. So I'd love to see where you got that statistic from, because it is actually the contrary. Inspections happen in all of these stores, and that is one of those things. You said that stores aren't shutting down. Well, here in Florida, lots of stores shut down. The hemp stores have had a lot of people coming in and shutting them down. Any store that is selling products that are not regulated are being shut down. So again, a lot of just points that I think you're making that I can't agree with, because it's just
Martha,
true.
we got to wrap things up. But one thing is, when you do have recreational places or medical places, somebody with a med card goes in there and buys it and then sells it to people on the black market. I mean,
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just saying
Sure,
that
can
does,
happen. That can happen, and that does happen. Also, one last point was with the fentanyl. Luke, as I'm sure you know, the reason people die from fentanyl is not because they are consuming fentanyl, is because they don't know how much fentanyl. They're not consuming medical grade fentanyl. They're consuming whatever comes across the border that is poisoning them. People don't die of fentanyl overdoses so much as they die of fentanyl poisoning. And that is the major problem. When things are legal, you know the exact dose you are taking and you can take it. Patients who are prescribed fentanyl do know the exact dose and don't die from it. People are dying because of the black market. And one of the things that I think
how does cigarettes factor into all of that?
is
real quick, but she is right though, because they make fentanyl patches that you don't OD on, and lollipops that you can take that you don't. But if you get on the black market, that's usually how people die.
Her point is that these drugs are not pure, and that's why people are dying from them. And the fact of the matter is, people are getting diverted, prescribed fentanyl, and they are dying from that. And so what she's making is,
and marijuana is going to be toxic too, though, Martha.
Dangerous argument, Alex, that we should have that the issue with these overdose crisis is from the people who are using it. They're just not informed enough on how to use fentanyl and how to use methamphetamine, and that's why they're dying.
I don't think that's why.
The craziest arguments I've ever heard. I don't know if I've ever heard.
I'm happy to answer it if you just give me the
cannot
opportunity.
blame the people who are dying in the overdose crisis. They're not educated enough, and that's why they're dying.
Right. So you're saying people are dying because they're not smart enough. Meanwhile, we have the evidence.
No, that's not what he's saying.
I'm
sorry. That's not what he's saying, Martha.
You're saying that they don't have the
education. What you're saying is just very dangerous.
It is. You can go, and let's just be real. It is kind of dangerous. We are talking about dangerous drugs. Marijuana is dangerous. Every drug that we've talked about is dangerous.
We have the experience from Prohibition. During Prohibition, alcohol was poisoned and people died from it. The problem with what you're saying is that we already know why it happens, because it is easier to add fentanyl into your cocaine, into your heroin, make it stronger. You cut it with that, and that is why people are ODing. People are not ODing from the fentanyl patches. People are not ODing from opioids that were prescribed by their doctor. It is Prohibition that causes the problems.
That's just not true.
Some people have died from their prescription. Okay,
we'll tell you how false that is. But regardless, we need to get to our closing remarks, Alex. So I don't know if you want how you want to do it, Martha. Maybe
no. And Luke, I guess you can go first. Yeah, Luke, you can go first, and then try. Or actually, Martha
first. So I'd rather have Martha do it, and I'll have the last say if she got the first say.
All right, Martha, you said you in first. Just 2 minutes. Well, what do we want to do?
Well, whatever.
Okay. I mean, let's just. I feel like Luke will be shorter. Luke will be shorter. We've covered a lot, guys. We've covered a lot. This is a complex subject. I do think that we should have access to marijuana. I think it has benefits, but at the same time, like I said at the beginning, it has a lot of negative effects too. Young kids on marijuana, it's going to cause mental health issues eventually, or maybe in the short term, maybe in the long term. I just don't think that we can live in a society where you take alcohol or marijuana and think that it doesn't have a somewhat of a permanent effect on you. And over time, the more you do it, the worse the effect. But whatever.
Absolutely.
whatever we want to say, I still think we should be able to do it. You know what I mean? I think we should have a free country. So, Martha, you did a great job today. Everybody, I want you guys to go follow Martha on X right now, Bueno for Miami. And I want you guys to follow Luke as well in the description. Their X accounts are there. And whether you guys like weed or not, I know some people are getting mad. Brian from Philly gave a bunch of super chats. He's a big pothead 420, so he does not like you, Luke. And Luke, you are a narc, so even though I think you made a lot of great points, and I'm not just saying that, you are annoying as hell that you're trying to limit our 420 lifestyle. But yeah. I think you have the best intention. So you are an admirable, in my opinion. I think what you're doing is admirable. So with all that being said, thank you guys both for being here. So I'm going to let Martha just, talk for 1 or 2 minutes. You don't have to go on all day long, but kind of just make your closing arguments. And then Luke, you can end it. And like I said, everybody go follow both of these lovely people.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say thanks, Luke, for showing up. I know that we went back and forth, but I do appreciate it. I think that you are a man of your word for showing up. And thanks so much, Alex, to you and all your team for hosting this debate. We have seen that prohibition is a problem in this country, and tobacco sales today are lower. Lots of things that used to be kids love what is prohibited. Because marijuana is prohibited, it just makes it that much cooler. It makes them want to have it. Same thing with alcohol. The more it is available to adults and they do have that information, the less children necessarily want to rebel by it. Again, we can look at studies from other countries that have done this. But I do appreciate the debate, and I do believe that Americans should be free to make decisions, even if they are the wrong decisions. And that is why marijuana should be legal.
Thank you, Martha. And with that, Luke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Martha, so much. I'm sorry we had to debate against each other this time, but maybe the next ballot measure in Florida, we can be on the same team again, fighting against big marijuana, which is what it's all about. Alex, thank you for having us. So I will close by saying that the freedom that our founding forefathers envisioned for this country was not an unbridled freedom that, in other words, would be nihilism or anarchy. That is not what they envisioned at all. The freedom that our founding forefathers envisioned for our society was a freedom that was couched in terms of virtue, of good, of a society where everyone had a chance, of a society where everyone could pull themselves up by their bootstraps and make something of themselves and be free to practice their religion as they so intended. That was the vision for freedom that our founding forefathers had. That vision is being destroyed by the for-profit addiction industries that we have allowed to come into our society. When we legalize drugs, we have seen what happens. Alcohol accounting for 100,000 deaths a year, tobacco still accounting for 500,000 American lives lost a year, and they're now getting more profits with vapes, nicotine pouches, etc. And now we're seeing big marijuana is asking to be let in the door as well. These companies do not have freedom in mind. These companies want to addict you. They want to addict your kids. They've proven it. Look at the evidence that we've talked about. They are targeting our youth just like they've done with tobacco and alcohol. And this is not freedom, folks. And when people are addicted to a substance, they then become reliant on the safety net, on the healthcare services, on society to support them. And when we have millions and millions of Americans now who are experimenting with marijuana, who are developing addictions, they're going to need more help. We're having a mental health crisis in this country. Where do we think that it started? We have our kids in a very serious mental health crisis in this country. Where do we think that it started? It's because they are being targeted by corporations that want to hook them. So what legalization is about big corporations, big pharma, big tobacco, big alcohol that want to do their same old game, lying to the American public and addicting them for a buck. So I encourage you to oppose the legalization of marijuana and check out my website, learnaboutsam.org. Thank you so much.
And I just want to say, this is great. They did grow hemp, and guys, this is a divisive topic, but it was a good one, and we learned a lot. I didn't realize there's 100,000 more people die from alcohol than fentanyl. That is a new thing. So
not 100,000 more, but it's slightly more people.
I mean, 100,000, so just slightly more. I mean, I didn't realize 100,000 because I knew that we had over 100,000 fentanyl deaths. I heard in 2024.
Yeah, now it's down.
What I read.
Yeah,
now it's down a little bit. Well, that's good. So, that's crazy. I think it's obvious that alcohol is worse than fentanyl. I'd love to debate you on that, Luke, sometime. That would be fun.
I don't know if I'm going to do that debate.
Yeah, I know. You don't have to. But like I said, everybody go follow both of these great people. And honestly, Luke, I guess this is my last question. What about SSRIs? those have to be worse than marijuana. I mean, I don't think you should really give kids
I think
marijuana
again,
at all.
it's the wrong framing of the issue. You know, when we look at drug policy, we don't look at what drug is worse than the other drug. We
That's
look at
true.
as a society, what are people using? 60%
Thankfully, we
of
don't, because
listen, 60% of Americans
Tylenol kills
use
40,000
alcohol.
Americans every year.
Martha, let me answer this question, please.
Yeah.
60% of Americans use alcohol. That's why we could never prohibit it. Marijuana has always been used by a fractional amount of Americans. That's why it was a drug that made sense to prohibit and to keep its use down. Now, you know, if it gets to a place right now, it's around 10 to 15% who use regularly every single, day or on a regular basis.
Wow, I didn't see you pulling out an Anslinger.
If that continues to go up, then that's a consideration we have to make. But right now, it's something not the majority of the population uses on a regular basis. We should keep it that way.
You're right.
We're
Only a
bringing
small
lot more
percentage of the population uses cannabis, and those generally are white people. Even though Anslinger pulled it out because he said that.
Is that true? White people smoke more than black people, but is that
It's
just
true.
because white people?
The evidence is that it's comparable among the races. But you know,
But
you know who-
it
there's
is
no black
unfortunately the
ownership
black
in
and
the
brown
marijuana
communities
industry.
that are
None.
paying the
I'll
price.
just-
But there's no black ownership. Martha, he says there's no black ownership. I heard in Atlanta that all the
Less
black
than
people were rich in their
4%.
weed shops. That's why they wanted to
4%
legalize
of the
it.
entire marijuana industry is owned by members of the black community. Less than 4%.
Yep. And it's so, of course, they tend to pay the price the most and are targeted. So I just found it very curious that you went ahead and said that a small percentage of the population uses it. And that's why we can just stop it. Let's go ahead and continue to marginalize those communities.
You're doing so bad at putting words in my mouth, Martha. You're literally like 0 for 20. I said a small percentage uses it regularly. Okay, when you deal with facts, you have to be careful about what you're saying. You have to say what the research actually says.
I'm so
and
glad
what
this is
people
recorded
actually
because
say.
I'll just rewind it and cut that piece
people,
for you.
I said it was people using it regularly. It is a small percentage of our population, at least for right now.
Luke, can smoking weed make you gay?
I am not qualified to answer that question. I can tell you that.
Well, thank you guys for both being here. Thank you, Martha. Everybody go give both of these lovely individuals a follow.
Thank you, Alex.
Peace, guys. We're going to see you tomorrow night in studio. What do you want to say, Luke, before we go? You say something, and then Martha say something, and then we're ending the stream.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you,
Love you guys.